There's a fucking head in front of us, and there's a reason for that. It's time to tell the Leatherface story. Hit that fucking music!
Movies, music, story times, all kinds of shit for you. Everything goes if it's happening now from
So anyways, this is a Leatherface story.
I like how whenever we come back from the theme, it's so low energy.
Yeah. Completely anticlimactic.
Yep.
But actually, I've told another Leatherface related tale before.
You met him.
Yeah. Because everybody in prison claims, in Texas prison anyway, claims that they met Leatherface. And that just made me shake my head vigorously in disapproval. But that's not so fun a tale because it sucks. And it just shows how ignorant people are. But this is a tale that apparently you haven't heard. You
Nope.
may have.
I may
but when
have.
I mentioned it to you, you didn't seem to have any recollection of it.
That being said, I have the worst memory of all time.
Yeah. So if it does become familiar at one point, don't exclaim, "Oh, I remember this!" Because then you'll be like Mr. Gluttony, saying shit. Doesn't matter. But
That's kind of my role in $10 Slimer, though.
yeah, that's what your paycheck says.
Yep.
And by paycheck, I mean nothing.
I actually have to pay someone to give me a piece of paper that's worth nothing.
It says nothing from nobody, and I'm the guy that gives it to you.
Yep.
But anyway, this is the Leatherface story in one sense. I wish, upon a fish, I wish that the Guardian was here, because he was the one that had first exposure, if you will, to this, to the finer details of this story. But he's not, because he's a fucking shithead. So I'm gonna tell his side and my side. But anyway, the Guardian, our sometimes companion and compadre here at $10 Slimer and the Wrestle Ramblers. Check that out. Don't. Anyway, he used to work at a call center. I guess he still does, but it was a different call center then. And call centers are like high school in the sense that it's just a bunch of dumbasses out to stab each other in the back.
I'm not gonna say
and bickering.
I'm not going to say that I heard more than 5 years of just call center tales from him, and every single time I'm like, man, these people stink!
Yeah.
Also, you stink for freaking playing into them. Everybody stinks is what I'm saying.
Yeah, they're not a fun place to be, but man's got to work, so that's where he worked.
Yep.
And anyway, he was at the fucking call center. And here's the thing about Guardian. He's always trying to hit up on chicks.
Oh, yeah.
And he's always failing miserably because he tries too damn hard. And that backfires immediately in anybody's face who tries to do that. So anyway, speaking of faces, back to this Leatherface thing.
Yep.
He was talking to this chick. And I don't know if he was trying to hit on her, but since it's Guardian, I'm going to say he was. But it turns out this chick was recently married. So
definitely yes.
It was a no-go for him. Not that it ever was a go, but anyway, this chick was recently married. He was talking to her, so he basically got friend-zoned. If that was his intent, he got friend-zoned. Either way, he's not getting laid. Mm-hmm. So the only thing he's got is conversation with this chick. Anyway, one of my favorite things back then was whenever Guardian would drop by, I would be regaled with his tales of misery from work. And I always found those stories to be amusing, funny.
Yeah.
You know.
I will say that unlike me, he's actually a pretty good storyteller in that he'll make the stupidest tale pretty funny.
Yeah. Yeah. And he has such misfortune with people and interaction. But he accepts that. So when he, tells the story, it comes off as pretty damn hilarious. So I would always be anxious to hear the next story from him from work. Anyway, he started telling me about this chick, this recently married chick, and her stories of woe, because she would talk to him about what was going on in her neighborhood. See, it seems that she had moved in recently with her newly, since she was a newlywed, with her husband. She had moved into a new place, and this place was a stone's throw away from her husband's mother. So, a block away or so, right? Anyway, she would tell him about this little town she lived in, and more specifically, she would talk to him about her weird ass fucking neighbor. And I was like engaged in these fucking tales, because apparently, according to her, this fucking weirdo dude was like a psychotic, strange fucking personage that dwelt in the fucking darkness, almost like a fucking vampire and shit. And
call him.
yeah, and he was like the stuff of legend. You know, people feared him. Children, ran away in his presence. He made the occasional appearance. The way he was physically described was like if this was the next fucking Phantom of the Opera and shit.
Man.
So these tales were always like these elaborate, kind of like jump scare stories of her or her husband or whatever seeing this neighbor. Oh, I saw the neighbor today, and he was doing this weird thing or that weird thing, right? So anyway, long story short, these tales came over the course of like a month or 2 or 3. And every time he would come, which would be 2 or 3 times a week, he would tell me her stories about her weird-ass neighbor. I was engaged. I was hooked. I wanted to know this fucking guy, man. Who is this fucking guy? I want to live next to this guy. He sounds intriguing. Anyway, I'm not going to tell you those stories. I'm going to tell you the story about the weird-ass neighbor. And that is, one day, he goes to work. He sees the chick, and she looks particularly distraught, maybe even a little disheveled physically. Mm-hmm. And he's like, yo, what's wrong? And she's like, this thing with the weird-ass neighbor is getting out of hand. This is what happened last night. And this was her story. Apparently, she had gone, since she lived not so far from the mother-in-law of her husband, she had gone to visit. And the house of the weird neighbor was between, so to speak, give or take a few houses, those 2 domiciles. Mm-hmm. So she had to cross in front of the street and yard of the weird neighbor. And anyway, she goes to visit, and the visit, as is, sometimes it's wont to do, sometimes when you go visit people, you go a little over long, you stay a little late, and apparently she was helping her cook or something, so, it was nighttime by the time she had to leave.
The spook time.
The spook time.
The witching hour is close at hand.
The way she described it, it was like fucking 3:33 a.m. or some fucking shit.
The witching hour is close at hand.
So I'm pretty sure it wasn't, but that's the way it seemed in the description.
It was like freaking wolves howling and shit.
So she leaves very trepidatious. She leaves her mother-in-law's home to go and take the fucking green mile apparently to her own home. Having to pass in front of the weird neighbor's house. So she's, trying to hasten as much as it can. She's trying to hurry to get to her house when she hears the slamming of a spring door. A violent slamming. She freezes. She knows it's coming from the neighbor's home. She turns, and there, lit in the moonlight, is the neighbor, standing in the threshold of his doorway. The way she described him was with a hideous countenance worthy of the devil himself. So distorted features, crazy ass fucking hair everywhere, and he's just staring at her, backlit by the lighting of his home.
Like an 80s flick.
Yeah. And she froze, according to her. She froze. She was, she gasped and her breath went away and she just couldn't move. Terrified. Locking eyes with the sunken chasms
of this ghoul.
So the neighbor stands and he stares back, and then he clunks 1, 2, 3 times down the stairs,
and then he falls,
and then he slams the door, and then he turns and he looks at her and he stares, and she still can't move. Long moment, and finally she gets the courage and runs away. So she tells the story to the fucking guardian, and he's like, what the fuck? And as the guardian is telling me this story,
you're like,
there's something about it that rings familiar, but not. Like a sense of deja vu.
You're like, oh, maybe I saw this in a flick or something.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe I saw this in a movie.
In a hit film.
Something's not coalescing in my mind, but at the same time, I'm grasping for something. And I look at the guardian, and he continues his tale, and he goes, is your neighbor's name Ahab? And she goes, oh my God, how did you know that? And he goes, what the fuck? That's my friend. And then it hits me. It locks in, and the reason that my mind wasn't grasping it was because I've shaved my head for over a decade now, and I'm like the hair.
You used to have Jimmy Kimmel hair.
I used to have big ass hair, but that's those days are gone.
Yep.
But
Just like your hair.
the hair part, the hair part threw me off a little, but the other stuff sounded really familiar. This was the hair.
Yep.
Here's what happened. I used to have a little dog named Buffy.
Yep.
See, this is the thing. This is a morality tale of perspectives. Point of view is everything. Eye of the beholder and all that shit. Because while to her I was this maniac from beyond the grave or some shit, to me I was just some jovial fuck wanting to play with his pup. Anyway, this is what happened. I used to have a little dog named Buffy, a little Chihuahua dog, kind of very evil.
Hated me.
No, like all Chihuahuas, she just kind of like drew to one person, and everybody else
draw blood from me multiple times.
She did,
which is why I wear this mask.
Liposuction onto your face. But yeah, man, she kind of had like imprinted in me or some shit, Twilight style.
Like she imprinted her freaking fangs into my goddamn dome. Anyway,
but yeah, man. So I used to like to. Well, here's the thing. I kept the dog at my mom's place because my mom's place has tile and the dog isn't house trained.
Oh,
so
she definitely wasn't.
So if it's shat or pissed, you could basically just mop it up, Whereas my place has carpeting, and that would cause a fucking horrible disaster of stink, which coincidentally is happening right now next to me. But anyway, so I kept the dog at mom's place.
Coincidentally, I'm also not potty trained.
And the thing is, mom,
just ignore that.
because you're throwing me off fucking trail here. Anyway, mom lives right next door to me. Okay, so, and that girl's mom lives to the other side of me. Anyway, I'm sorry, that girl's mother-in-law lives to the other side of me. So I decided that night that I was going to do one of my favorite things, which was put on one of my masks, and I used to have a lot of masks, and go scare the dog. Because the dog, for some reason, whenever it saw a mask on me, would go insane, and it would make this funny-ass face of anger.
It sounds horrible.
A face that you saw many a time as it attacked you.
Yeah.
And I thought it was a funny-ass face.
It's not funny when it's in your own.
But the best part about it was I would take off of the masks, and the moment she saw my face, she would be all friendly and shit. And then I would put it back on, and she'd go rabid. So that was my goal. I was gonna go scare the dog. It was pretty much the middle of the night. It was anywhere from 12 to 2. It was pretty late, and there wasn't a lot of lighting back then. In fact, the lighting we have here now is because of a neighbor who put in a fucking light bulb that must come straight from the sun or some shit, because it's bright as fuck at night now. But back then there was no light. We live in a shit-stained little town. No light except for moonlight, basically, and some street lights that are like a fucking street over, a block over. Anyway, so the setting was ripe for her fear, because I was wearing this particular mask. I had put on my Leatherface apron. That's right, I have a Leatherface apron, and basically dressed up the part. The reason the door slammed open was because my spring door is literally missing a spring.
Yeah.
So when you open it and it's a little bit windy, even the slightest wind, it'll slam violently up against the building. The reason I clumped down the stairs was because my stairs are rickety, and if you don't get a good footing on it, you can fall. So
those are the scariest stairs of all. The stairs are the scariest part of this entire story.
Yeah, if you're on this side of the fence, the scares come from the stairs.
Yeah. Oh, I like that save.
It wasn't a save, it was planned. Let's go with that. All but anyway, yeah, man. So I had the mask, I had the apron. I slammed the door open because that's what happens with this fucking door. I have to clump down the stairs because then I'll fall to my death. Me staring at her, it was literally this. When I opened the door, I was like, the fuck? Why is this chick staring at me? Then I realized she's not going to stop staring at me, so I clumped down the stairs. I turn around, close the door, and again, since there's no springs, it slams. When I turn back, she's still staring. And again, in my mind, I'm thinking, why the fuck is this chick staring at me? thinking nothing of the fact that I'm wearing a fucking human skin on my face. Now imagine the grooves and the stitching
Yeah, at night.
at night. This thing probably looked fucking insane to her. And this is a relatively good quality mask. I mean, it survived years, and it still feels new. Latex can go to waste real quick. It still feels new. So just imagine, and it sets real well against the face and everything. So just imagine how this fucking thing looked to her in that lighting, with these circumstances. No wonder she was fucking terrified. Meanwhile, I'm over here going, what the fuck is wrong with this bitch? Anyway, a few months later, her husband died, not related to anything.
All right.
And she moved, and she was probably happy about that.
Yep.
Anyway, that's the Leatherface story, because apparently I was fucking Leatherface.
You also did scare the neighbor's kids once because you were wearing a chatterer mask.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
And for some ass reason, you looked out your bathroom and there just happened to be there. And they were terrified.
That was awesome.
At this freaking hideous-faced, tooth-having, you know.
And that wasn't even a great mask. It was pretty cool.
It looked cool, but it fell apart
yeah.
the second you touched it.
And then the good thing about that mask was that it was so skin tight that it actually looked like it was part of you. So I was the fattest chatterer to these kids. But they probably never even seen Hellraiser, so they were like, the fuck is this terror?
From beyond the grave.
From beyond the grave. Another thing we did with masks was we wore our luchador masks.
Oh, yeah, that was cool.
We wore our luchador mask and went around town and found out that in a place like this, which is populated by a lot of Mexican Americans, a luchador mask goes a long way.
Yep.
People wanting to take pictures with you. People assuming you're a luchador.
Yeah. I remember one time we had an entire... Now, in our minds, it was pretty epic, but I'm sure for the people watching, it was terrible. We had a little match, or a little hardcore match outside, and people were like gathered around and shit.
Yeah, the neighbors' kids were all gathered around watching us beat each other senseless, like morons.
In the least safe environment of all time, by the way.
Now, there was no actual wrestling moves. It was literally us grabbing stuff and hitting each other with it, and me throwing you on the ground continuously.
Yeah. Onto rusty nails.
Although I will say I did have a good stone cold stomp. So that's a thing.
Honestly, I don't even remember.
That's because I hit you in the head with it?
You did. Now, it's actually related to what I was going to say right now. I was wearing a blue demon mask, which is a blue mask, obviously. Took it off. My face was actually bluer than the mask because I couldn't breathe.
Oh, man. That was classic.
Yeah.
Anyway.
We also played air hockey at a Peter Piper with them all once.
Yeah.
That was a thing. Anyway, we have a history with masks.
Yeah. And then, sadly, besides the luchador mask, this is one of the last few masks I have left. But it's a good memory in sense of this story and the fact that I love me some Chainsaw. Just Chainsaws, not the movie.
Not the movie. You actually hate the movie.
But I would never make that mistake. I love that movie. But anyway, this has been the Chainsaw story, or the Leatherface story, I guess. P.S. Some fucking masks. Hit like, share, subscribe, and those notification buttons. Because we're out.